Hi everyone, welcome to episode 5 of the Business as Usual podcast. We've done a few of these now, and we've decided we're going to make a few little changes to hopefully make it something that's a bit easier for students to engage with. So we're going to, rather than do them every 2 weeks and trying to find the time that way, we're going to do them every Friday. So we've figured out a bit on our schedule where we can do them every Friday. So they'll be twice as often, but they'll be a little bit shorter. So we found that when we looked at the data, half an hour is a little bit too long. So we're going to try and aim for sort of no more than 20 minutes, like 15, 20 minutes ideally. So we're going to do only a couple of stories in depth, and then we're going to give you some stories at the end that you can have a little bit of a look at. The other thing we've done is this week, and this is something that hasn't kicked on at all yet because we haven't really done anything with it, but we've launched an Instagram account, which I think is going to be better for students to keep up to date with when these podcasts come out. But also we're going to do some graphics and some of the YouTube videos and stuff over the next few weeks as well. So if you're on Instagram, can you follow us at business as usual and then an underscore at the end? So business as usual underscore. Business as usual was taken, so we had to add an underscore to the end. So we're going to put some like graphics on there. I've done one just to sort of test it out, which was a graphic on Ansoff's matrix. We're going to try and get a few more up this weekend as well, so we can sort of get the ball rolling. But if you see that, then if you follow that, then you'll get sort of reminders about when we do new podcasts, and hopefully that will lead to you it becoming a bit more of a sort of weekly part of your time. So we've got two stories. I'm going to start off by having a look at something that's been really, really prominent in the news this week, and that is the launch of Disney Plus. And we're going to talk a little bit about how that affects Netflix as well. So Disney Plus launched in America last Wednesday or Thursday. It's not going to be in the UK until March the 31st. It's one of the big competitors to Netflix, and it's probably going to be just about the same price. I think they expect it to be about £7 a month, so pretty much the same price as Netflix. But it is going to have a huge impact on Netflix as well. And even though it's not having an impact in terms of, it's not on sale in the UK until March, it is starting to have that impact already. So if you don't know, Disney actually, owns a variety of different companies that produce a variety of different programs. So they own Pixar, Star Wars, Marvel, National Geographic. They own Fox. They bought Fox in the last few years, who own The Simpsons. So all of these shows that are currently on Netflix as well and other streaming services like Amazon Prime, etc., they will lose them at some point over the next few years, depending on when their licenses run out. The way it basically works for Netflix is they hire these, don't they? And they hire them for a period of time. I know that when it came to Friends, I think it cost Netflix like $100 million to renew Friends for 2019. But at some point, if all of these providers start making their own streaming services, Netflix are going to find themselves in a little bit of trouble. Mike, you've been doing a little bit about Netflix lately, haven't you?
Yes, I was looking at price elasticity and supply and demand with my class the other day. So I set a homework and was looking at Netflix US subs essentially dropping since they've increased their price to by $2 on their most premium service. So I was looking at, is it elastic, inelastic? And they've seen about 500,000 subs drop this year from their $2 price increase. So I mean, with Netflix, with Disney Plus coming on the scene as well, there's a few discussions about, are Netflix going to maybe look to drop their price again for the first time in quite a few years, with it having gone up about, I think it's 66% since 2014. So yeah, more pressure on Netflix, which will be interesting to see.
Yeah, definitely. So just a bit of context on that then. So Netflix has about 150 million subscribers worldwide. 2019, as you've already mentioned, they've dropped a few. It's actually the first time in their history that they've had a month where they lost subscribers. Usually they gain subscribers. And I guess the question is, why is it that they're increasing their price? Because Disney Plus are saying that they're going to come in in America in particular, which is it's only launched so far in the US, Canada, and Netherlands. Not really sure why the Netherlands in particular, but they had a bit of a test there. And the offer that they're given there is basically cheaper than Netflix, but all of the things that you have to pay extra for Netflix, like 4K streaming and stuff like that, and 4 screens at a time, you have to pay extra for, as you mentioned, the premium package on Netflix. And Disney Plus is offering that straight away. So it will be interesting to see whether Netflix do reduce their price a little bit to try and break that competition, because Disney Plus had 10 million subscribers on the first day. So bearing in mind that Netflix has 140 million, it's obviously nowhere near that yet, but on the first day they had 10 million. And bearing in mind they're only available in the US, Canada, and Netherlands. Now, some of those subscribers might be the free trial people, and so as a result they might cancel, but it does look like it's been a pretty good start. They reckon that Disney Plus needs an estimated 60 million subscribers to break even. So that's obviously going to be their target. So I mean, why is it that Netflix are raising their prices then, knowing that they've got increased competition?
Well, if you actually look at from a purely mathematical point of view, if you look at the $2 increase compared to the physical drop in subscribers, it actually comes out as being price inelastic. So actually, their revenue has gone up as a result of putting the $2 up. So they've got to decide: are they now sales maximizing, looking to just maximize their market share, or are they happy to sacrifice some of that market share for revenue and profit? So I guess it goes with the latter.
Yeah, they've got to spend money though, haven't they? I did a bit of research on this, obviously, and it said that 37% of the watch hours on Netflix are originals, so things Netflix have created themselves. And we've already mentioned they're at risk of losing a lot of their products, a lot of their shows over the next sort of year or two. Well, if that would be something like 63% of their potential shows and their watch hours might go. So they're spending a lot on their original programming in the hope that people will enjoy the original program. Stranger Things is a really, really good example of that. I think 13 Reasons Why has also been really, really popular. So I looked at the data, and if you look at their spending on originals, so this is the amount of money that Netflix are spending on creating their own shows. In 2015, they spent 4.5 billion. 2019 they spent 15 billion, and that's increased each year. You've got 4.5 billion, 7 billion, 9 billion. 2018 was 12 billion. 2019, 15 billion pounds. So when their costs are increasing at such a rate, and they have to because it's the only way they're going to stay relevant, they're probably going to have to increase their price to an extent to try and boost, as you mentioned, boost their revenues a little bit.
Yeah, I mean, I saw a survey they did of all the people that cancelled. Well, it's 1,000 people that did cancel. Was their sample size, and the number one reason they cancelled was the increase in price. But the second close reason was that they just run out of content to watch. They found it boring. So I mean, the increased spending is all based on their market research. It seems so a good decision, like you said.
More original stuff.
Yeah.
The next story.
So, with the first debate going on this week between Jeremy Corbyn and Boris Johnson, I thought it'd be good to look at what the election outcome could mean for UK business. So, it links with the external environment impact on business, PESTLE, etc., etc. So, I thought this could be interesting. So, we'll start with corporation tax, which they've both changed stance on slightly. So Boris Johnson promised in the leadership election for the Conservatives to cut corporation tax even further, to make a post-Brexit Britain that would be, pro-business. He's had to renege on that because he's had a lot of pressure for more public spending in things like the NHS, schools, etc. And it needs to come from somewhere. So cutting corporation tax would cost the government, because you're essentially putting more profit into the pockets of businesses, which he hoped to be reinvested, etc. But with that staying now static at, I believe it's 18%, that is going to possibly dissuade new businesses to come to the UK following Brexit. Corbyn, on the other hand, has stated that he is going to focus on more government spending, and he's going to fund that with an increase of up to 28% in corporation tax, which, as you'll know from doing supply and demand, etc., with tax being a cost, would shift supply to the left, and we could see higher prices, less consumption, etc., in the UK economy. So this could be a very bad thing for business. But on balance, if we look at the EU, a 28% corporation tax would only put us in line with the average. So whilst it sounds crazy compared to Boris Johnson, it's not a very outlandish figure if we look at our EU counterparts.
I guess.
What are your thoughts, Joe?
Yeah, I mean, the first thing that's worth making sure students are aware is why is it that a government makes corporations pay tax? And so the main reason is that, I mean, the argument for a lower corporation tax is that it gives businesses more profits because they're not having to give as much to the government, and then that allows them to create jobs and to expand, open new stores, create new jobs, produce more products, and so as a result creates jobs, which then creates wealth. And obviously all of those jobs will pay income tax, and so government receives its tax revenue in different ways. And the question is when you increase a business's profits, how much of that gets reinvested and how much of that goes to the entrepreneurs who effectively already probably, when you talk about large businesses, already very wealthy. Small businesses, obviously, they need to have their profit in order to live their quality of life. The argument for increasing corporation tax, is that it creates more revenue for the government, which government can then spend on services such as the NHS, services such as education, and what have you. It is obviously a matter of perspective, isn't it? But it is important for a business student to understand the benefits and the limitations to both an increase and a decrease in corporation tax. Just one of the examples of something from the upcoming election, and the sort of the ideas that the two main parties, but the other parties as well, are setting out, and how that will have an impact on business, especially when you're doing a PESTLE analysis, because obviously there's the political side of that, which is the P, but also that then has an impact on the economic side of things as well. So something that business students should really be paying attention to the upcoming election, and having a look at. And you can find this information. I know BBC has obviously the BBC is supposed to be independent, has a sort of a page on there with what does the Labour manifesto, the Conservative manifesto, the Liberal Democrats manifesto mean, and then there's a section in there for business, so you can find out what the impact on business would be of each of these different parties if they were to gain power.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, I would encourage students to really try and engage in the election, especially the impact on business, because it will make a big difference. And this is, like I said at the start, one of the topics that students seem to really struggle with. So looking into another kind of pledge that one of the parties has made is around business rates. Now, we've talked on previous podcasts about e-commerce booming and the death of the high street, essentially. So business rates is something that the Chamber for Commerce has brought up constantly over the last few years. So you may have seen the term rent and rates if you've done financial statements, etc., or you may have heard it mentioned. Rates are essentially a business tax paid to the local council if you have a store or any other premises like offices. So business rates for the first time this year, on average, exceeded the rent that some businesses were paying. So this is usually thought of for small businesses having a big impact, but you're now even seeing big businesses like Clinton's, etc., begging for reductions in business rates and rent. So Boris Johnson, I should say, of the Conservatives, has promised to greatly reduce business rates to try and ease the burden on the high street, because he believes in a thriving high street, as he says, etc. So it'll be interesting to see if Jeremy Corbyn will also come out with something on business rates, because they've released their manifesto and they haven't got anything regarding a substantial cut so far. But that could be something quite big for business post-Brexit.
Especially with all the pressure that they've got from e-commerce, which again also links to PESTLE analysis, because in that technological, you've got the growth of e-commerce and then the impact that then has. All right, so we've looked at 2 stories in a bit of depth. What we want to do is we want to start giving you 5 stories that we're just going to give you some headlines, some things that you might want to have a little bit of a look at in your own time. So we've got 5 things that sort of jumped out to us from the news this week that we think might be worth having a little bit of a look at. Number 1, Hayes Travel have hired 1,500 staff. So Hayes Travel, you might have heard mentioned if you've been listening to the podcast before. They were the company that bought out the Thomas Cook stores and rehired 2,330 of the Thomas Cook staff in a sort of something that makes it look like their plan's actually going to be a little bit successful, which I was a little bit skeptical about. They've hired 1,500 more staff, so it suggests that that's going pretty well. Second story, Mike.
Number 2, Aston Martin unveils £158,000 SUV aimed at wealthy women. So links to market segmentation. Read on for more details.
Right, story number 3, Coldplay have announced that they're not going to go on a tour until they can figure out a way of making it carbon neutral and cut out all of the carbon emissions that come from mostly travel to their venues. Story number 4.
So story number 4, KPMG ends its backing for Prince Andrew's mentorship scheme. So this looks at the impact, both positive and negative, of celebrity endorsement. Story number 5, Jack.
The last one, a man has sued Burger King for cooking vegan and meat on the same grill. Well, I think we'll end there before we get into an argument about vegans and right and wrong and the environment. Mine were quite environmental, actually. I think obviously there's a bit of a environmental lean for my stories this week. All right, so thank you very much for listening every week. I'm trying to create a better world, Mike. Every week we're going to start to do that. So we're going to just put 5 stories at the end that you can research. We'll make sure that they're typed up on the graphic or in the comments on the YouTube video and in the description on Spotify. Please subscribe on YouTube. Follow us on Instagram, as we mentioned, at businessasusual_, and we'll do these every Friday that we're in term time, of course. I'm not going to be doing it on New Year's Eve or anything like that. So try and pay attention each week, and you'll hopefully get something that will help you become a better business student. Cheers, Mike.
Indeed. Cheers, Jack.